Namaste. Our traditional understanding of human mind says that our mind is a separate, autonomous, secular entity engaging with the environment. Whereas recent research points out the mind to be far more pervasive and open to influence from outside than just the secular environment as we know it to be. And to clear this dilemma and discuss more in detail, we have with us psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
So, can we start with what the term open mind means?
Traditional model of the mind looks at the mind as a system which responds to stimuli from inside and outside. The goals of this system are survival of the self, survival of the species, progress of the species, and evolution. The first three objectives we can see in the world. The fourth one, we believe, because we find it in our empirical study of history of species on this planet. This traditional view of mind rests on the foundation of four pillars. First, that the mind is strictly personal entity. So there is nothing before or after the person which is there fundamentally in the mind. So before the birth of a person and after the death of the person, nothing of this system survives. So it does not exist before birth, does not exist after birth, after death. So this is first. Then the first principle of the traditional model is that mind is a strictly personal entity. The second fundamental pillar is that essentially the mind is in a secular environment. In the sense, we are not talking of soul, spirits, purpose of life, purpose of the individual, and so on. We are situated in a very secular, existential kind of a environment. So the system of the mind as a system, essentially is a secular system. It is not working to fulfill the goals of a soul or God. And there is the thing like reincarnation or spirits influencing the mind and things of those types. The third is the mind essentially is based, the understanding of mind is based on materialism. So the mind is seen as an epiphenomena, and therefore we don't go into the esoteric areas of soul, consciousness, and so on. It's basically treated as an epiphenomena of matter. And the fourth, the mind is a non-mystical, non-spiritual entity. Therefore, whole areas of reincarnation, of esoteric parapsychology, of spirits, of mystical powers that can influence the mind, or mystical powers that can be released from the mind, all those things go away. So this is how the traditional model of the mind is. It's based upon these four pillars. Not that everything that we experience as human beings can be explained by this model. But this model has a sort of self-justifying ferociousness, almost a fanaticism, where the data which you cannot explain is just not given any significance. And that is how traditionally the idea of the mind has been in psychoanalysis, except for Carl Jung. So except for Carl Jung, by and large in psychoanalysis, the idea of the mind has been on the lines of this traditional model. Not to worry if you cannot explain phenomena of transference, counter-transference, projective identification, transfer of psychic material in the therapy and so on. So this is the traditional idea about the model of the mind. Contrast to this is the idea of the open model of the mind. The model of the open mind, where the mind as a system does not rest upon these four pillars, but is situated in a far more influencing open environment and is itself constituted of many of the influences from what we call the open environment, which is outside of these four pillars of the traditional model. So the open model of the mind allows for considering issues like reincarnation, spirits, transgenerational transmission, and so on. So we have essentially these two ways to look at the mind, the traditional model and the open model. And the open model is what we'll be discussing today. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. What are the ways in which the openness of mind manifests?
The open model of the mind is contesting the traditional model of the mind. And the open model of the mind derives its genesis, the material on which it rests, its strength, and its future prospects, which are coming from a variety of areas. And these are frontier areas of research. Four areas I would like to point out where researches are pointing towards, and even traditional understanding points towards, a far more open and interactional model of the mind and far more non-secular model of the mind. Let us take these areas one by one. Strangely, the first is psychoanalysis. As we go deeper into psychoanalysis, we realize that phenomena of transference, counter-transference, projective identification, and transfer of psychic material, we are not able to explain in any secular way in terms of the known science as we have it today. Second, we have Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, which also is transpersonal. It is not a personal thing, because we are saying the collective unconscious is a racial thing. It is nothing personal about it. It has not only a common substratum across human minds, but it also has essence of experience of our race on this planet. In a way, it's also transmitting through genes the collective wisdom of experience of our species. So these are the two areas, though the elements of technique which we cannot explain how they operate. And Carl Jung's model. So psychoanalysis is one area from where certain pointers towards an open mind are coming from. Second area is parapsychology. From parapsychology, we have very well studied phenomena of precognition, knowing something which is going to happen in future. Retrocognition, knowing something which happened in the past. For example, a steamer got drowned in the Pacific Ocean. We don't know where exactly. And the scuba divers want to have some sort of locational guidance. And somebody who is gifted in retrocognition can give it to them. They can go in, and when they actually find the steamer, the credibility of retrocognition gets proved, or at least gets enhanced if not proved. Then we have out-of-body experiences, again from parapsychology. So precognition, retrocognition, and out-of-body experiences. where the person feels he is out of body, but he still feels that psychologically he is still going on and in a very different way. So the second source from where we get some understanding, material and support for the open mind model is from parapsychology. Third is from area of hallucinogenic research and holotropic research. So those who have experimented with hallucinogens, substances, and there is a very vast literature on ayahuasca and a range of uh, hallucinogens which open up access to those areas of the mind which are not available otherwise. And the second area is of holotropic breathing, where the same experiences which you have using hallucinogenic substances can be had by practicing certain breathing techniques, which means that the states of mind you are encountering in hallucinogenic experience is not because of toxicity of the hallucinogen. Rather, the hallucinogen sort of removes the inhibitions to access that area of the mind. So it is not a toxicity created state. Rather, the hallucinogen in question inhibits the inhibitors, which don't allow us to access those parts of the mind in normal course. So this is a very important area, and Stanislaw Grof has done a lot of research on this, very good research, where we can see how by practicing certain breathing techniques, similar experiences as somebody has in hallucinogenic state can be accessed. Not only that, early life traumatic memories can be accessed. Transpersonal experiences can be had, and healing potential of those rare states of mind can be harnessed. So this is the third area. And the fourth area is mysticism and spirituality. Here we have a very long tradition, especially in India, of accessing various ranges of the mind. In the recent past, you can see Sri Aurobindo's work in Savitri, where he devotes many chapters to the book of Traveler of the Worlds. And there he explores various parts of the consciousness, worlds that come out of or rather can be accessed through each of the chakras. So the Buddhists talk about 14 psychological worlds constituting our whole psychological universe. Some people draw a system of 7 worlds and so on, whatever that be, but a range of material, both in terms of exploration, in terms of reported experiences, and in terms of tools to make it happen, and also tools to use those states for healing and self-development. These are coming from spirituality and mysticism. And in spirituality and mysticism, of course, the use of mantra, visualization, exercises, yoga, certain herbs, hallucinogens, and spiritual rituals, they are all in place. And in mysticism, we talk about mystical powers, supernatural powers. And there is very well documented literature in both these areas. So spirituality and mysticism is one more area from where the support is coming towards idea of a more open mind. So from these 4 areas of psychoanalysis, parapsychology, hallucinogenic research and holotropic research, and spirituality and mysticism, from these 4 schools or other areas, we are getting material which is strengthening the case and enhancing our understanding of the open mind.
Can you explain, can we discuss the influence of psychoanalysis? How does this influence psychoanalysis? And of course, other in detail.
The way it can influence psychoanalysis is in 3 areas. model of the mind,
Yeah.
pathogenesis, and healing technique.
Mhm.
And it is still very new. It is still not in the center. It is still not accepted by everybody. So very few people would even ponder over these areas in the therapy room. By and large, psychoanalysis still continues with age-old traditional model of the mind, except for those who practice Jungian psychoanalysis. So, if we allow these new findings to come in, we would have to undergo a change in terms of the model of the mind, pathogenesis, and healing technique. So, there would be a fundamental change across the board if we incorporate these latest findings into psychoanalysis. Unfortunately, I don't think psychoanalysis is ready for it, and most people are too secure in what they do. They don't want to open up new areas, or many are too afraid to uh, commit the heretical crime of opening up a new area. It's almost like a betrayal of psychoanalysis.
Is it? I thought it's more out of fear of something.
There is a fear, a very strong fear of peer pressure. So, in that sense, I look at psychoanalysis as a very Abrahamical enterprise, where it becomes fanatical very soon.
So can we go deeper into each of these open mind processes?
Let us take a few examples. Take the example of projective identification. Various types of projective identification happens. You can have a direct projective identification when in the session you start feeling something that is not yours. And when you cross-check with the person, he tells you that these are the feelings that he really has. Or if he is not conscious about it, he can link up to them and find it out. So we don't know how the transfer happens. How does the psychic material get transferred? Because there does not seem to be any secular way which can explain this. Now, the second part you can look at it is variations of this. I have tried, for example, during COVID, when you are doing work online, right? And at times the video goes off and only the audio is there, even then you can feel projective identification, which means audio part has a strong role to play. But then you also realize many times, even without the audio part, this can still happen. So something else also is at work. So you can look at this and its variants. You can also look at delayed projective identification. That something is put into you and after a few hours after the session, it comes up. You can also look at the second element of feeling what is going on in the mind of the other. I'm not saying knowing it. That's a different thing altogether. But in a macro intuitive way, in a very generic way, not in a specific way, feeling something. And this is explained in pranic healing in terms of the astral cords. That when the astral cords are strong with somebody, if something difficult happens in an intense way, you start getting a faint hint of it. So this can be second. We can look at what Carl Jung had found. That layer of the unconscious mind or dreams and stories created by people completely separated geographically and still having the commonality of the same mythology in a generic sense. You can also look at reincarnational research where some people have been able to very easily tell about their past lives. And Ivan Stevenson, I think, if I'm remembering it correct, Stevenson, I don't recollect his name. He has documented a large number of cases which are verified to the strictest rigor possible. And many of them had healing experiences when they went into that kind of journey. And similarly, you can look at Stanislav Grof's work of how healing happens in cases of psychologically determined asthma, phobia, and so on, in deep states of holotropic breathing. And in that state of holotropic breathing, people also experience many times the mythological images that Carl Jung talked about. Many people spontaneously experience the birth trauma. Some people talk about past life experiences. And this is very important because this brings before us the prospect that we might be living in a far more complex and very pervasive and diffused kind of reality. And the notion of the mind we have of almost a personal closed kind of system is an oversimplified model of the mind. And in fact, the model of the mind that we need to develop to factor all of this in is a far more complex model of the mind. So these are some of the specifics that we can cite at present. We can also go into parapsychological research and get findings from there to forward our discussion, but that will make it very long. These are some of the areas where we don't know how things operate, but they do operate. So the question is not if this happens, the question is we don't know how this happens. And this opens up for us unconventional areas of thinking out, and that lead inevitably to a far more open model of the mind and far more respect for what we call in general as transpersonal.
But so then does this not change in a fundamental way our view of the nature of mind and reality?
It does. And that is why it is so difficult to accept it. Because there is too much of philosophical investment and the new sort of atmosphere of knowledge that dawns on us is very unsettling. So we are settled in a semi-wrong, semi-right position, and we don't want to move out of it because it's too threatening for us. There is a terror of the change of paradigm. Yes, you were saying something.
No, I was just asking, is psychoanalysis working on this area? I mean, to engage with this area?
Not the mainstream. Maybe few people on the margins would be, but not the mainstream. In fact, I have created a model of the mind where these factors are factored in. I call it the HEAT model of the mind, holistic elemental analysis and therapy. And in that model of the mind, these elements, some of these elements are factored in, not all of them, but that makes it a very complex model of the mind. And by present standards of science, it makes it a psychophilosophical model, not a psychological model, because many of the things there cannot be empirically investigated. So this is where it stands. I forgot the link. Where were we? What was the question?
Is psychoanalysis working on this area? And you said not the mainstream psychoanalysis.
And before that,
not the mainstream. Yeah.
And before that, what was the question?
Sir, you were mentioning about the HEAT model of mind.
And before that?
You mean what question?
Yeah.
The question before that was, does this not change our fundamental view, you know, on the nature of and the reality of
So
that.
I was coming to that part. Has changed in a fundamental way our view of mind and our view of reality. Now, how does it bring about a change? There are many ways of looking at the change, because once we acknowledge that there are transpersonal elements in the mind and they are fairly well established. Take, for example, intergenerational trauma transmission. Now, intergenerational trauma transmission is almost a scientific fact now, which means you can have elements in your mind which are not dealing with anything you have experienced. They have come in heredity. So that also is a transpersonal element. It's not strictly a personal element. So, the way our view of reality changes is this one. In a broad way, we look at transpersonal as a very feasible element, which is very important in our understanding of the mind, the transpersonal element. Second, we can divide this transpersonal element into a secular transpersonal and a spiritual transpersonal. So you can explain many of the transpersonal phenomena in a secular paradigm also and in a spiritual paradigm also. Leaving that point for the moment, three important areas come up. One, that we may be living in a reality where there is an element of reality, a part of reality, which is outside, above or below the range of our investigation, the range of our senses and our instruments put together. So if we put together our senses and our instruments together, even then there is something above or something below our reach. And maybe that is where the answers to the phenomena of open mind lie. That is one outcome of that thinking. Second outcome of that thinking is that maybe the universe is far more conscious and far more interacting than we believe it is. In the sense, everything around us is not necessarily inanimate and without any consciousness or purpose. There may be purpose and consciousness of different types in nature, and that may be at work, and we may be living in a purposeful universe, not necessarily a purpose agnostic universe. And by that token, we may ourselves have an individual purpose and not necessarily be a blank slate on which we can write any purpose we wish. And the third element, very interesting, is that we may be looking at a universe which is far more spiritual, which has various types of consciousness, various types of beings and spirits, which we may not be able to see or recognize. And this purposeful universe with far more different categories of players than we know of is then a far more complex place, because then we are looking at worlds of different beings interacting with each other, worlds of different forces interacting with each other, consciousness spread around with its own purpose and intent and power. And the secular world that we know being only a small part of the actual entire world that it is. And this fundamentally alters our view of reality, and from there, the way the mind operates. And needless to say, the model of the mind in that kind of a situation becomes an extremely complex model of the mind. Even today as it is, one of the most difficult things to do in psychoanalysis is to go to model of the mind. It's one of the most difficult areas to operate or work in. And this becomes even more complicated when we look at this kind of a view of reality. So yes, the schools and ideas which lead us to the approach of an open mind also bring to us these prospects which make reality more interesting, more enriching, more fascinating, but also very complex.
Yes. And so what does spirituality, I mean, how does spirituality look
Spirituality,
into this area?
spirituality always looked at the mind from an open mind perspective. It was never at ease with the traditional model of the mind approach of psychology. So spirituality always believed in uh, consciousness being fundamental, in karma being fundamental, in transgenerational transmission being fundamental, in purpose of the life being fundamental, in harnessing and cultivation and harvesting of occult powers, and working with higher beings in energy healing, say for example, is Reiki and pranic healing or otherwise also. So the idea of higher beings, of zones of the universe, of many bodies coming from many zones, of use of mantra, visualization, yoga, spiritual rituals, certain herbal preparations, substances, access to higher beings, the entire dynamics of using energy for various purposes, the whole area of idol therapy, the whole idea of using crystals for a variety of purposes. All this for spirituality always was the mainstream. So spirituality always believed in the approach of the open mind. And now today in science, as we move towards it, we are getting nearer to an ancient way of looking at the world.
Nice. Well, that was a short talk on in a series of philosophy and psychoanalysis, and we discussed the open mind. Join us in another talk for many such interesting topics, and you can write to us at hveindia@gmail.com. And thank you very much, sir, for helping us through. Namaste.
Namaste.